Prince Alexander of Valdoria had always been protective of his children, but nothing could have prepared him for what he discovered that autumn evening in the royal palace. His daughter, Princess Isabella, only 8 years old, had been complaining of strange noises coming from her bedroom for weeks. The palace staff had dismissed it as childhood imagination, but Alexander decided to investigate himself. The Valdorian royal palace stood majestically against the mountainous backdrop of their small European kingdom. Built in the 1400s, the castle had housed the Montclair dynasty for over 6 centuries. Prince Alexander, heir to the throne, lived there with his wife Princess Catherine and their 2 children, Princess Isabella and young Prince Marcus. That evening, Alexander had been reviewing state documents in his study when Isabella appeared at his doorway, tears streaming down her face. She wore her favorite pink nightgown, the one with tiny crowns embroidered along the hem that Catherine had specially ordered from the kingdom's finest seamstress. "Papa, the sounds are getting louder," Isabella whispered, clutching her stuffed unicorn tightly against her chest. "It sounds like someone crying, but not like when Marcus cries." "It's different. It's scary." Alexander set down his papers immediately. For 3 weeks, Isabella had been reporting these mysterious sounds. The palace guards had conducted thorough searches of her quarters multiple times, finding nothing unusual. The chief of security, Commander Henrik Larsson, had even brought in specialized equipment to detect any structural issues that might cause strange acoustics. "Show me exactly where you hear these sounds, sweetheart," Alexander said gently, taking his daughter's small hand in his. They walked through the ornate corridors of the East Wing, past portraits of ancient kings and queens whose eyes seemed to follow them in the flickering candlelight. The palace maintained its medieval charm, though modern amenities had been carefully integrated to preserve the historical integrity. Isabella's bedroom was a princess's dream, walls painted in soft lavender, with hand-painted murals of fairy tale scenes. Her 4-poster bed, crafted from ancient oak, had been in the royal family for generations. Delicate lace curtains framed tall windows that overlooked the palace gardens. "It comes from under my bed, Papa," Isabella said, pointing to the ornate bed that dominated the room, "especially at night when everything is quiet." Alexander knelt beside the bed, listening intently. At first, he heard nothing but the usual palace sounds, distant footsteps of guards making their rounds, the gentle hum of heating systems, and the occasional settling of ancient wooden beams. But then, faintly, he detected something else, a soft, rhythmic tapping, almost like Morse code but irregular. Too deliberate to be structural settling, too persistent to be coincidental. "You're right, Isabella. There is something," Alexander admitted, his protective instincts immediately heightened. "Go stay with Mama while I investigate this properly." After ensuring Isabella was safely with Catherine in their private quarters, Alexander returned with Commander Larsson and 2 trusted guards. They moved the heavy bed aside, revealing ancient wooden floorboards that had been polished smooth by centuries of use. "Your Highness, these boards appear to be original to the castle's construction," Commander Larsson observed, running his hands along the wood grain. "But look here, these particular planks seem slightly different. Indeed, upon closer inspection, several floorboards appeared newer than the others, though still aged. The wood stain was slightly different, and tiny gaps suggested these boards might be removable." Alexander found a heavy letter opener from Isabella's writing desk and carefully pried at the edge of one board. To everyone's surprise, it lifted easily, revealing a space beneath that shouldn't have existed according to the palace's architectural plans. What they discovered beneath made Alexander's blood run cold. A narrow tunnel, barely wide enough for an adult to crawl through, extended into darkness beyond the reach of their flashlights. The tunnel walls were roughly hewn stone, clearly much older than the palace above. But more disturbing were the items scattered near the entrance: old metal shackles, rusted but still intact, attached to iron rings embedded in the stone walls. "My God," whispered Commander Larsson. "Your Highness, this appears to be some sort of medieval holding cell or tunnel system." Alexander's mind raced through the implications. His daughter had been sleeping directly above what appeared to be an ancient prison or secret passage. The sounds she'd been hearing could be anything: settling stones, water dripping, or something far more sinister. "Commander, I want this entire area secured immediately," Alexander commanded, his voice tight with controlled anger and fear. No one enters or exits this tunnel without my explicit permission, and I want a full historical investigation of these chambers. As they secured the area and replaced the floorboards temporarily, Alexander couldn't shake the feeling that they had stumbled upon something significant. The palace had stood for centuries, housing countless secrets within its stone walls. But finding what appeared to be a hidden prison system directly beneath his daughter's bedroom felt like a violation of everything he held sacred about protecting his family. The discovery raised immediate questions that demanded answers. How long had this tunnel system existed? Who knew about it? And most importantly, was someone or something down there responsible for the sounds that had been terrorizing his 8-year-old daughter? Alexander made a decision that would change everything for the royal family. He would personally investigate these tunnels, no matter where they led or what secrets they revealed. His daughter's safety and peace of mind were worth any risk. But as he tucked Isabella into a temporary bedroom that night, neither he nor Commander Larson realized that their discovery was just the beginning of a mystery that would threaten not only the royal family's safety, but the very stability of the Kingdom of Valdoria itself. The ancient stones beneath the palace held secrets that some would kill to protect, and others would die to expose. Prince Alexander had inadvertently opened a door to the past that some believed should have remained sealed forever. As dawn approached over the Valdorian mountains, Alexander stood at his study window, watching the sunrise paint the peaks in shades of gold and crimson. Somewhere beneath his feet, in the darkness of forgotten tunnels, lay answers to questions he didn't yet know how to ask. The investigation would begin at first light, but Alexander already suspected that nothing in their royal lives would ever be the same again. The next morning brought an unusual tension to the Valdorian royal palace. Prince Alexander had barely slept, his mind consumed with questions about the discovery beneath Isabella's bedroom. He had ordered the East Wing sealed off from all but essential personnel while they conducted a thorough investigation. Elena Rosenberg, the kingdom's leading historian and archaeologist, arrived at dawn with her team of specialists. A woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and intense green eyes, Dr. Rosenberg had spent decades studying medieval European castle systems and had worked with several royal families to uncover hidden aspects of their ancestral homes. "Your Highness," Dr. Rosenberg said as she examined the tunnel entrance with sophisticated equipment, "what we're looking at here is definitely medieval in origin, but the construction techniques suggest it was built during a specific period of political instability." Alexander watched as her team carefully documented every detail of the hidden chamber. The shackles they had discovered were now being analyzed by forensics experts, while ground-penetrating radar mapped the extent of the tunnel system beneath the palace. Princess Catherine joined them, having arranged for Isabella and Marcus to spend the day with their grandmother, Queen Margot, in the palace's secure western quarters. Catherine's usually calm demeanor showed signs of strain. Discovering that their daughter had been sleeping above what appeared to be a medieval prison had shaken her deeply. "The children are asking questions," Catherine informed Alexander quietly. "Isabella knows something significant has happened, and Marcus keeps wanting to see the secret room she told him about." Dr. Rosenberg overheard and approached them. "Your Majesties, if I may suggest, it might be wise to prepare age-appropriate explanations for the children. Historical discoveries like this often generate significant media attention, and they'll likely hear various versions of the story." Alexander nodded grimly. Media attention was indeed a concern. The Kingdom of Valdoria might be small, but royal news traveled fast in the modern world. They needed answers before word of this discovery leaked beyond the palace walls. "Doctor, what exactly are we looking at here?" Alexander asked. "Your initial assessment mentioned political instability. What kind of political situation would require secret holding cells beneath the royal residence?" Dr. Rosenberg consulted her historical documents, which her assistants had spread across tables in the palace library. The construction style and metallurgy of these shackles suggest they date to approximately the late 1600s, during the reign of King Ferdinand III. According to our historical records, that was a period of significant religious and political upheaval throughout Europe. She pointed to specific entries in ancient ledgers. King Ferdinand faced multiple threats during his reign, both from neighboring kingdoms seeking to expand their territory and from internal religious factions that opposed his policies. It's quite possible these tunnels served as holding areas for political prisoners or religious dissidents. Commander Larson, who had been coordinating the security aspects of the investigation, approached with new information. Your Highness, we've completed the initial radar mapping. The tunnel system is extensive. It extends not only beneath the east wing but connects to a network that runs under most of the palace's oldest sections. This news struck Alexander like a physical blow. The implications were staggering. If tunnel systems existed beneath the entire palace, how many other chambers might contain similar evidence of past imprisonments? More importantly, how many current security vulnerabilities might exist? Commander, I want every entrance and exit point identified and secured, Alexander ordered. And I want to know if any of these tunnels extend beyond the palace grounds. As the investigation continued, Dr. P.F.E.M. Imperial Rosenberg's team made increasingly disturbing discoveries. The chamber beneath Isabella's room was not an isolated incident. Using advanced imaging technology, they identified at least 6 similar chambers throughout the tunnel network, each containing evidence of long-term human habitation. Your Highness, Dr. Rosenberg said gravely, we need to discuss what we found in the other chambers. She led Alexander and Catherine to a secured area where artifacts from the tunnels were being catalogued. The collection was deeply unsettling. More shackles, pieces of clothing preserved by the cool, dry tunnel environment, and most disturbing of all, carved messages in the stone walls. These inscriptions appear to be made by prisoners, Dr. Rosenberg explained, showing them photographs of the tunnel walls. They're in multiple languages, some in Old German, others in what appears to be an early form of French, and several in Latin. Alexander studied the photographs. Even though he couldn't read most of the ancient text, the desperation carved into those stone walls was palpable even centuries later. Doctor, do we know how these people were treated? Were they political prisoners, common criminals, or something else entirely? Dr. Rosenberg hesitated before answering. The evidence suggests these were likely political and religious prisoners, possibly held without formal charges or trials. The conditions appear to have been harsh. We found evidence of inadequate food supplies and poor sanitation. Some of the inscriptions include what appear to be final messages or prayers. Catherine turned away from the photographs, clearly disturbed by the implications of what their ancestral home had housed. Alexander, our children have been living above what amounts to a medieval concentration camp. The weight of this discovery was becoming overwhelming. The royal family's ancestral home, the symbol of centuries of Valdorian stability and justice, had apparently served as a site of secret imprisonment and possibly torture. But the investigation was far from complete. As Dr. Rosenberg's team ventured deeper into the tunnel system, they discovered that some passages appeared to have been used much more recently than the medieval period. Your Highness, called Dr. Rosenberg's assistant from deep within one of the tunnels. You need to see this. Alexander and Commander Larson carefully made their way through the narrow passage, following flashlight beams to where the assistant waited. What they found defied everything they thought they knew about the timeline of these discoveries. In a chamber approximately 50 feet from Isabella's bedroom, they discovered evidence of 20th century use. Modern electric wiring, though old and deteriorated, had been installed at some point. Empty cans with dates from the 1940s littered one corner, and scratched into a wooden beam was a date, 1943. My God, whispered Commander Larson. These tunnels were used during World War II. Alexander's mind raced through the historical implications. Valdoria had remained officially neutral during World War II, but like many small European kingdoms, they had faced pressure from both Allied and Axis powers. The discovery of evidence suggesting clandestine wartime activities beneath the royal palace opened entirely new questions about his family's history. Dr. First N. Rosenberg was photographing everything when she made another discovery that stopped everyone in their tracks. Hidden behind a loose stone, she found a metal container, remarkably well preserved despite decades in the tunnel environment. Inside the container were documents, papers that appeared to be correspondence between various individuals, written in multiple languages, and using what appeared to be coded language. The dates on the documents ranged from 1941 to 1944. Your Highness, Dr. Rosenberg said quietly, I believe we've discovered evidence of a World War II resistance operation that was based in these tunnels. Alexander stared at the documents, trying to process this revelation. His grandfather, King Gustav, had ruled during World War II and had always maintained that Valdoria's neutrality was absolute. But the evidence before them suggested a far more complex reality. As they emerged from the tunnels that afternoon, Alexander realized that what had begun as an investigation into strange noises in his daughter's bedroom had evolved into a discovery that could fundamentally change understanding of Valdorian history. The questions were multiplying faster than the answers. Who had operated the wartime resistance from beneath the palace? Had King Gustav known about these activities? And most pressingly, if these tunnels had been used as recently as the 1940s, who else might know about their existence? Alexander made a decision that would prove fateful. Rather than sealing off the tunnels and classifying the discovery, he chose to continue the investigation regardless of what secrets it might reveal about his family's past. The truth, however disturbing, was preferable to allowing his children to live above these buried secrets. But as evening fell over the palace, Alexander couldn't shake the feeling that their discoveries had attracted unwanted attention. Several palace staff members had reported seeing unfamiliar vehicles in the area, and Commander Larson had noted unusual activity on communications channels typically used by foreign intelligence services. The investigation into the tunnels was no longer a private family matter. It was becoming a matter of national security, and Alexander was beginning to suspect that some secrets were buried for very good reasons. 3 days after the initial discovery, Prince Alexander found himself facing a crisis that threatened everything he held dear. The documents found in the World War II cache had been translated by a team of expert linguists, and their contents had shaken the very foundations of what the royal family believed about their own history. Dr. Elena Rosenberg sat across from Alexander in his private study, her face grave as she presented the translation results. Princess Catherine was present, along with Commander Larson, and surprisingly, Queen Margot, Alexander's mother, who had requested to be included in this briefing despite her advanced age of 78. "Your Majesties," Dr. Rosenberg began carefully, "the documents reveal that during World War II, these tunnels served as a headquarters for a resistance network called Operation Silver Chain. The name appears to be a reference to the actual silver chains we discovered, which were apparently used as a symbol by the resistance members." Alexander studied the translated documents spread before him. The correspondence revealed a sophisticated network of individuals working to smuggle Jewish refugees and Allied operatives through Valdoria to safety. But most shocking was the identity of the operation's leader. According to these documents, Dr. Rosenberg continued, Operation Silver Chain was coordinated by someone using the codename Crown Prince. Given the level of access to the palace required for this operation and cross-referencing the dates with historical records, Queen Margot spoke before Dr. Rosenberg could finish. "It was my husband," she said quietly. "King Gustav was crown prince during those years before his father died in 1943. The revelation hit Alexander like a physical blow. His grandfather, whom he had idolized as a man of unwavering neutrality and diplomatic wisdom, had been secretly running a resistance operation from beneath the royal palace. "Mother, why didn't you ever tell us?" Alexander asked, his voice barely controlled. Queen Margot's eyes filled with tears she had held back for decades. "Because we swore an oath of silence that would last until death. Gustav made me promise that if anything ever happened to him, I would take this secret to my grave. Too many people's lives depended on that silence." Catherine reached across to take Queen Margot's hand. "But the war ended over 80 years ago. Surely the danger has passed?" Commander Larson cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Your Majesties, I'm afraid that may not be entirely true. The increased surveillance activity we've detected around the palace suggests that someone is very interested in our current investigation." Dr. Rosenberg nodded gravely. "There's something else in the documents that explains why this secret has remained so sensitive. Operation Silver Chain wasn't just about helping refugees escape. According to these records, they were also gathering intelligence on Nazi operations throughout Central Europe and passing it to Allied forces." She pulled out a particular document, its edges yellowed with age. "This correspondence indicates that King Gustav's network provided crucial intelligence that helped the Allies plan several major operations, including details about German troop movements that proved vital to the success of certain D-Day preparations." Alexander stared at the document, trying to process the magnitude of what his grandfather had accomplished. But another, more disturbing thought occurred to him. If Gustav was providing intelligence to the Allies, then there must have been Nazi operatives trying to discover and stop his activities. Did they ever succeed in identifying the source? The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Queen Margot spoke slowly, her voice heavy with old grief. They came very close. In late 1943, Gustav received warnings that a Nazi intelligence unit had been dispatched specifically to investigate suspected resistance activities in neutral kingdoms. That's when he made the decision to suspend operations and seal the tunnels. But not before ensuring all evidence was hidden, Dr. Rosenberg added. These documents were clearly meant to be destroyed if the operation was discovered. The fact that they survived suggests the evacuation was rushed. Commander Larson had been monitoring communications on his secure device throughout the briefing. Now he looked up with obvious concern. Your Highness, we have a problem. Our communications intercepts indicate that at least 3 different intelligence organizations have become aware of our investigation. We're detecting increased activity from sources that appear to be German, Russian, and American in origin. The blood drained from Alexander's face. Are you saying that 80-year-old secrets are still causing international incidents? It appears so, Your Highness. Some of the intelligence that King Gustav's network gathered may have implicated individuals whose families or organizations still have significant political influence today. There could be people who have spent decades ensuring these secrets remained buried. Doctor, Rosenberg was examining another set of documents when she made a discovery that changed everything. Hidden within what appeared to be routine correspondence was a list of names, individuals who had collaborated with the Nazi intelligence efforts to uncover Operation Silverchain. Your Majesties, she said slowly, some of these names, they're still alive, and several of them hold positions of significant influence in current European politics. The room erupted in tense conversation as the full scope of the situation became clear. They weren't just dealing with historical artifacts. They had uncovered evidence of wartime collaboration that could destroy current political careers and destabilize international relationships. Alexander stood and walked to the window overlooking the palace gardens where Isabella and Marcus were playing with their tutors, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around them. The sight of his children reminded him of what was truly at stake. Commander, what's our current security status? He asked. We've increased palace security to maximum levels without declaring an official alert. All entrances are monitored, and we've established a perimeter beyond the palace grounds. But Your Highness, if multiple foreign intelligence services are involved, our capabilities may be limited. Queen Margot struggled to her feet, her age showing more than usual under the stress of these revelations. Alexander, there's something else you need to know. Gustav didn't work alone in Operation Silverchain. He had partners in other European royal families, people who risked everything to save lives and preserve freedom. She moved to an ancient portrait of King Gustav that hung in Alexander's study. Before Gustav died, he told me that if these secrets were ever discovered, I should contact certain individuals who would know how to handle the situation. Those people, or their descendants, may still be in positions to help us. Alexander turned from the window. Mother, who are these people? The resistance network extended to royal families in Denmark, Belgium, and the Netherlands. There were also connections to certain British aristocratic families who provided funding and coordination. Gustav always said that if the network was ever exposed, these families would either help protect the secret or ensure that the truth came out in a way that honored those who died for the cause. Dr. Rosenberg looked up from the documents. Your Majesty, there's a reference here to something called the Silverchain Covenant. It appears to be an agreement between the various royal families involved in the operation. Queen Margot nodded slowly. The covenant was an oath that the families would support each other if the secrets of Operation Silverchain were ever threatened. It was meant to ensure that no single family would bear the burden of protecting these secrets alone. As the afternoon wore on, the situation grew increasingly complex. Commander Larson reported that foreign diplomatic channels were making subtle inquiries about historical research activities at the Valdorian Palace. Meanwhile, Dr. Rosenberg's team continued to uncover evidence that painted an increasingly detailed picture of the wartime resistance operation. But it was Isabella who unwittingly provided the most crucial piece of information. During dinner that evening, she casually mentioned to her parents that she had been hearing new sounds from her temporary bedroom in the West Wing. It's not the same scary sounds as before, she explained to Alexander and Catherine. These sound like people talking very quietly, but I can't understand what they're saying. Alexander and Commander Larson exchanged alarmed glances. If Isabella was hearing voices in the West Wing, it meant the tunnel system extended even further than they had realized, or someone was currently using the tunnels to move through the palace undetected. The investigation that had begun with a child's complaint about strange noises had evolved into an international incident involving buried wartime secrets, political blackmail, and quite possibly, current threats to the royal family's safety. As Alexander tucked Isabella into her new bedroom that night, checking and double-checking the security measures, he realized that they had passed the point of no return. The secrets of Operation Silver Chain were out, and there were people who would go to great lengths to keep them buried, or to use them for their own purposes. The next phase of this crisis would test not only Alexander's ability to protect his family, but also his willingness to honor his grandfather's legacy, regardless of the personal cost. The voices Isabella had heard in the West Wing turned out to be the first sign of something far more serious than anyone had anticipated. Commander Larson's security team discovered evidence of unauthorized entry into the tunnel system, fresh footprints in areas that had been sealed since the initial investigation began. Prince Alexander stood in the palace's secure communications room at 3 a.m, making encrypted calls to contacts his mother had provided. The Silver Chain Covenant, dormant for 8 decades, was about to be activated for the first time since World War II ended.
"Your Highness," came the voice of Crown Prince Frederick of Denmark through the encrypted line. "My grandmother briefed me about the covenant when I turned 30, but I never expected to implement it."
Are you certain you want to proceed with full disclosure? Alexander had spent the previous day weighing this decision. Full disclosure meant revealing everything about Operation Silver Chain to the international community before others could use the information for blackmail or political manipulation. It was a massive gamble that could either honor his grandfather's memory or destroy the monarchy's reputation. "Frederick, someone is actively threatening my family's safety to keep these secrets buried. We've detected unauthorized access to the tunnels, and my intelligence chief believes we have less than 48 hours before this situation escalates beyond our control." Similar conversations were taking place with contacts in Belgium, the Netherlands, and Britain. Queen Margot had spent her evening making calls to elderly contacts who remembered the original Operation Silver Chain, gathering intelligence about who might want these secrets to remain hidden and why. Dr. Elena Rosenberg had worked through the night with an expanded team of historians and intelligence analysts, piecing together the complete picture of what Operation Silver Chain had accomplished and who it had threatened. Her findings were both inspiring and terrifying. "Your Highness," she reported to Alexander as dawn broke over the palace, "we now understand why these secrets have remained so sensitive. Operation Silver Chain didn't just save lives during the war. It gathered evidence of war crimes committed by individuals who went on to have significant post-war careers in politics and business. The evidence was damning. King Gustav's network had documented collaboration activities, financial transactions with Nazi organizations, and in some cases, direct participation in war crimes by individuals from several European countries. Many of these people had reinvented themselves after the war, becoming respected political figures, business leaders, and in some cases founding members of major European institutions. Princess Catherine joined the briefing, having spent the night coordinating the children's safety with their security detail. Isabella and Marcus had been moved to a secure location outside the palace while the immediate crisis was resolved. "Alexander, whatever decision you make about disclosure, we need to consider the long-term implications for our children," Catherine said. "If we expose these secrets, there will be people who blame our family for destroying reputations and disrupting established political relationships." Commander Larson entered with urgent news. "Your Highness, we've identified the source of the unauthorized tunnel access. Someone has been using an entrance we didn't know existed, one that connects to the old monastery ruins about half a mile from the palace grounds." This revelation was deeply troubling. The monastery ruins were on public land, accessible to anyone with basic climbing equipment and determination. If hostile actors could access the palace tunnel system from an external location, the royal family's security was fundamentally compromised. "Commander, how long might this external access have existed?" Alexander asked. "Based on the evidence, possibly since the original tunnel construction in the 1600s. The monastery was built around the same time as the palace, and it appears they were connected by design, probably for religious ceremonies or as an escape route during sieges. Dr. Rosenberg was studying architectural plans when she made another crucial discovery. Your Highness, if the tunnels connect to the monastery, then Operation Silverchain had access to a much larger network than we previously understood. The monastery ruins include several underground chambers that could have housed significant numbers of refugees. As the morning progressed, Alexander received confirmations from the other royal families involved in the covenant. All had agreed that full disclosure was preferable to allowing the secrets to be used for blackmail or political manipulation. But they also warned that the disclosure needed to be carefully coordinated to minimize political fallout. Crown Prince Frederick called back with a proposal. Alexander, we've been consulting with historians and legal experts from all the involved families. We believe the best approach is to present Operation Silverchain as a heroic resistance effort, while simultaneously releasing evidence of the collaboration activities to appropriate international tribunals. This approach would frame the story as one of royal courage and sacrifice, while ensuring that evidence of war crimes reached proper legal authorities rather than being suppressed or misused. But as Alexander was considering this proposal, Isabella's safety concerns took an unexpected turn. The security detail protecting the children reported unusual activity around their safe house location. Vehicles had been observed conducting surveillance, and electronic monitoring had detected attempts to intercept their communications. Your Highness, Commander Larson reported gravely, someone is actively tracking your children's location. We need to assume that hostile actors are prepared to use them as leverage to prevent disclosure of the Silverchain documents. This escalated the situation to a level Alexander had hoped to avoid. Threats to his own safety were manageable, but endangering Isabella and Marcus was absolutely unacceptable. Queen Margot, despite her age and the stress of recent events, provided crucial guidance. Alexander. Gustav faced similar threats during the war. The families involved in Operation Silverchain developed protocols for protecting each other's children when the network was threatened. She produced a document that had been hidden in the palace archives for 8 decades. Detailed plans for coordinating protection of royal family members across multiple kingdoms when the Silverchain secrets were at risk. The covenant includes mutual defense obligations, Queen Margot explained. If one family's children are threatened because of Silverchain activities, all the families are obligated to provide protection and support. Within hours, the modern activation of these 80-year-old protocols was underway. Isabella and Marcus were secretly transferred to a secure location in Denmark, where Crown Prince Frederick's security forces took responsibility for their protection. Meanwhile, children from the other Covenant families were similarly secured as a precautionary measure. Dr. Rosenberg had been working with international legal experts to prepare for the disclosure when she discovered something that changed the entire timeline. Hidden in the deepest level of documentation was evidence that some of the individuals implicated in collaboration activities were still alive and in positions of significant political influence. Your Highness, we're not just dealing with historical justice, she informed Alexander. Some of these people have enough current political power to cause serious international incidents if this information becomes public without proper preparation. The weight of this discovery was staggering. Operation Silverchain hadn't just been a heroic wartime resistance effort. It had gathered intelligence that could still destabilize current European political relationships. Alexander made a decision that would define his reign and quite possibly his family's future. Rather than suppressing the information or releasing it immediately, he chose a third option that honored both his grandfather's courage and his own responsibility to current political stability. Working with the other Covenant families, he would present the heroic aspects of Operation Silverchain publicly, while simultaneously providing the evidence of collaboration activities to appropriate international legal and historical authorities through diplomatic channels. This approach would allow the world to learn about the courage of the royal families who had risked everything to save lives during World War II, while ensuring that justice for wartime collaboration was handled through proper legal processes rather than media sensationalism. But as Alexander prepared for what would become one of the most significant royal addresses in modern European history, events were already moving beyond his control. Someone had apparently decided that even the careful, diplomatic approach to disclosure posed too great a threat to their interests. Commander Larson received intelligence that suggested a coordinated effort to discredit the royal families involved in the Covenant was being prepared. False documents were apparently being created to suggest that Operation Silverchain had been a criminal enterprise rather than a heroic resistance effort. The battle for control of how these secrets would be revealed to the world was about to begin, and Alexander was beginning to understand that some people would go to extraordinary lengths to prevent the truth about Operation Silverchain from ever seeing the light of day. The confrontation came sooner than anyone expected. Just 72 hours after the Covenant families had decided on coordinated disclosure, Prince Alexander found himself facing an ultimatum that threatened everything he had worked to protect. At dawn on the fourth day since Isabella's discovery, Commander Larson burst into Alexander's study with news that changed everything. "Your Highness, we've intercepted communications indicating that Princess Isabella and Prince Marcus are being targeted for kidnapping within the next 12 hours. The threat was specific and credible. Intelligence sources had identified a team of operatives moving into position around the secure location in Denmark where the children were being protected. Worse, similar threats had been made against the children of the other Covenant families." Alexander's secure phone rang immediately. Crown Prince Frederick's voice was tense. "Alexander, we're under coordinated attack. Someone has decided that eliminating our families is preferable to allowing Operation Silverchain to be revealed." Within the hour, Alexander made the most difficult decision of his life. Rather than waiting for the carefully planned disclosure through diplomatic channels, he would reveal everything immediately through a live international broadcast. The safety of the children took precedence over political considerations. Dr. Elena Rosenberg had spent the previous night preparing a comprehensive presentation of the Operation Silverchain discoveries. Working with historians from the other Covenant families, she had assembled evidence that told the complete story, both the heroic resistance activities and the damning evidence of collaboration. Princess Catherine coordinated with international media, while Queen Margot provided final details about aspects of Operation Silverchain that had never been documented. Despite her advanced age, the crisis had awakened memories and details she had suppressed for 8 decades. "Alexander," Queen Margot said as they prepared for the broadcast, "Gustav always believed that if this day came, it would be because the world was finally ready to face the complete truth about what happened during the war. Don't hold anything back." The broadcast began at noon Central European Time, transmitted simultaneously by major networks across Europe and beyond. Alexander stood in the palace's formal reception room, with the ancient portraits of Valdorian kings serving as a backdrop to his revelation of their family's greatest secret. "Citizens of Valdoria and people of the world," Alexander began, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to reveal. "4 days ago, my daughter made a discovery that has led to revelations about our family's role during World War II that I believe the world deserves to know." He began with Isabella's discovery of the strange sounds, explaining how the investigation had uncovered the tunnel system and the evidence of Operation Silverchain. As he spoke, images appeared on screen showing the tunnels, the artifacts, and the historical documents that Dr. Rosenberg's team had catalogued. "My grandfather, King Gustav, chose to risk everything, his throne, his life, and his family's safety, to save lives and preserve freedom during Europe's darkest period." Alexander continued. Operation Silverchain was not just a rescue operation. It was a comprehensive intelligence network that provided crucial information to Allied forces and helped change the course of the war. The international response was immediate and overwhelming. News networks interrupted regular programming to carry the broadcast live. Social media exploded, with reactions ranging from amazement at the royal family's wartime courage to demands for justice regarding the collaboration evidence. But Alexander wasn't finished. The most difficult part of the disclosure was yet to come. However, the documents we discovered also contain evidence of individuals who collaborated with Nazi forces to try to destroy Operation Silverchain and capture those we were trying to protect, he said, his voice hardening. Some of these individuals survived the war and went on to build respected careers while hiding their wartime activities. On screen appeared redacted versions of the collaboration evidence, enough to prove its authenticity without immediately identifying specific individuals. Alexander explained that complete, unredacted evidence was being provided to appropriate international legal authorities for proper investigation. The broadcast continued for nearly an hour, with Dr. P.O.S. Rosenberg providing historical context and Queen Margot sharing personal memories of the operation's activities. The presentation was comprehensive, devastating, and ultimately inspiring. But the real impact came in the hours that followed. Within 2 hours of the broadcast, the coordinated threats against the royal family's children suddenly ceased. The operatives who had been positioned to carry out kidnappings mysteriously disappeared, apparently recalled by whoever had sent them. International legal authorities confirmed receipt of the collaboration evidence and announced immediate investigations. Several prominent political figures across Europe suddenly announced retirements or resignations, claiming health concerns or desire to spend more time with family. Most significantly, other World War II resistance archives began to be opened across Europe as families and organizations realized that the secrecy surrounding wartime activities was no longer necessary. Isabella and Marcus were safely returned to Valdoria within 24 hours, protected by a coordinated security effort from all the Covenant families. When Alexander was finally reunited with his children, Isabella's first question surprised him. "Papa, are you proud of great-grandfather Gustav?" she asked, clearly having watched portions of the broadcast with her security detail. Alexander knelt to her level, thinking about how to answer. "Yes, sweetheart, I'm very proud of him. He showed me that sometimes doing the right thing means taking big risks to protect people who can't protect themselves. Like you did for me and Marcus?" Isabella asked perceptively. "Exactly like that," Alexander replied, realizing that his 8-year-old daughter understood the situation better than many adults. The aftermath of the disclosure continued for months. International investigations resulted in several prosecutions for war crimes, while previously unknown resistance activities were documented and honored across Europe. The Operation Silverchain revelation sparked a broader movement toward transparency about World War II activities that had been hidden for decades. Dr. Rosenberg published a comprehensive historical account of Operation Silverchain that became an international bestseller. The tunnels beneath the Valdorian Palace were converted into a memorial and museum, ensuring that the courage of those who had risked everything for freedom would never be forgotten. But for Alexander, the most meaningful outcome was simpler. Isabella's bedroom was restored to its original location in the East Wing, but now she knew exactly what lay beneath it. Rather than being afraid of the history below, she took pride in sleeping above the site where her great-grandfather had planned operations that saved hundreds of lives. The strange sounds that had started everything were explained. Old ventilation systems in the tunnels had been creating acoustic effects, amplified by the palace's structure. But Isabella no longer minded mysterious sounds. She had learned that sometimes the most frightening discoveries lead to the most important truths. Alexander often reflected on how a child's complaint about strange noises had ultimately revealed one of the most significant untold stories of World War II. But more importantly, the crisis had taught him that protecting his family sometimes meant risking everything to ensure they could live with honor and truth. The Kingdom of Valdoria emerged from the crisis stronger and more respected than ever. The revelation of Operation Silverchain transformed the royal family from symbols of privileged tradition into examples of courage and sacrifice. Alexander's willingness to risk his crown to protect the truth had earned him international admiration and, more importantly, his children's respect. As he tucked Isabella into her restored bedroom months later, she asked him one final question about their adventure. "Papa, if I find any more secret doors, should I tell you right away?" Alexander smiled, thinking about the incredible journey that had begun with such a simple discovery. "Absolutely, sweetheart. In this family, we've learned that secrets are meant to be shared, especially the important ones." The palace settled into peaceful quiet that night, its ancient stones no longer harboring shameful secrets but instead standing as monuments to the courage of those who had chosen to do what was right, regardless of the personal cost. And in the tunnels below, preserved forever as memorials to Operation Silverchain, the voices of history whispered stories of bravery, sacrifice, and hope that would inspire generations to come.